The rain began without warning. It was past midnight when Daniel Carter turned off the empty highway and followed the flickering neon sign that read, Raven's Rest Motel, Vacancy. The sign buzzed like an insect trapped in glass. Daniel's hands trembled on the steering wheel. His phone had been dead for hours. No signal, no GPS, just darkness, rain, and the feeling that something had been following him since mile 83. The motel stood alone, swallowed by pine trees and fog. One long, decaying building, 12 doors, no cars, no lights except the office. Daniel parked. The moment he stepped out, the air felt wrong. Too quiet. Even the rain sounded distant, like it was falling somewhere else. Inside the office, an old man sat behind the counter. He didn't look up. Room, Daniel said. Just for the night. The man slowly raised his eyes. They were pale, almost colorless. Room 6, the man said. No television, no phone, no refunds. Daniel swallowed. That's fine. As he signed the registry, he noticed something strange. Other names filled the pages. Hundreds of names, but no dates after them. Busy place, Daniel said, forcing a smile. The old man smiled back. No, he said softly. Just permanent guests. Daniel laughed awkwardly. The man did not. Outside, Daniel unlocked room 6. The door creaked open with a sound like a whisper. The room smelled of dust and iron. 2 beds, a cracked mirror, a bathroom light that flickered even when turned off. Daniel tossed his bag onto the bed and sat down exhausted. That's when he heard it. A knock. Not on his door. From inside the bathroom. 3 slow taps. Knock, knock, knock. Daniel stood frozen. The bathroom door was closed. He hadn't gone in yet. The knocking came again, louder, and then a voice whispered directly behind the door. Daniel, you finally checked in. His blood turned cold because he had never told anyone at the motel his first name. Daniel didn't breathe. The bathroom door stood perfectly still, yet the whisper lingered in the air like a stain that refused to fade. Daniel, he stepped back, his heel bumping into the bed frame. This isn't real, he muttered. Slowly, he reached for the bathroom door and pulled it open. Empty. No one inside. Just a cracked sink, a stained shower curtain, and a mirror fog as if someone had breathed against it moments ago. Relief washed over him, brief and fragile. Then he noticed the mirror. A single word had been scratched into the glass from the inside. Welcome back. Daniel's reflection looked wrong. His eyes seemed deeper, darker, like someone else was staring through them. He turned away, heart racing. A sudden thud came from the room next door. Room 7. Daniel pressed his ear against the wall. Soft crying echoed through the thin plaster. A woman's voice, broken and desperate. Please let me leave. He knocked. The crying stopped instantly. No footsteps. No movement. Hello, Daniel whispered. Silence. He returned to his room, locking the door. The lock clicked, but didn't feel secure. He sat on the bed, trying to calm his breathing. That's when he noticed something carved into the wall near the nightstand. Names. Dozens of them. Scratched deep, overlapping, frantic. Mark, Emily, Joshua, Lucas, Sarah. And at the bottom, freshly carved, the letters still white beneath the dust. Daniel Carter. His chest tightened. I didn't do this, he said aloud. The motel light flickered violently. For a split second, the room darkened completely. In that darkness, he heard breathing. Not his. Right next to his ear. Room 6 remembers you, a voice whispered. The light snapped back on. Daniel spun around. No one, but the mirror across the room now showed something impossible. His reflection was still sitting on the bed, while Daniel himself was standing. The reflection slowly smiled and mouthed 3 silent words. You never left. A scream tore out of Daniel's throat. He ran to the door and yanked it open. The hallway outside had changed. The doors stretched longer. The ceiling hung lower. And at the far end, the old man from the office stood motionless, facing the wall, his head twisted backward completely around. His pale eyes locked onto Daniel's. Check out, the man said calmly. It is not an option. The hallway lights went out. Daniel slammed the door shut. The knocking began again. From every wall. The knocking didn't stop. It multiplied. From the walls, from the ceiling, from beneath the floor, like fists pounding from a buried place. Daniel pressed his hands over his ears, but the sound crawled inside his skull. "Stop," he shouted. Silence. Sudden. Absolute. Then came a soft voice, right outside his door. "Daniel, please help me." It was the woman from room 7. His body screamed at him not to open the door, but his hand moved anyway. The hallway lights flickered back to life. The corridor looked normal again, short, narrow, harmless. Room 7's door was slightly open. A pale woman stood inside, her hair wet as if she'd been crying for days. "My name is Emily," she said. "I've been trapped here for 3 nights." Daniel felt a sharp chill. 3 nights. He had only been here for minutes. "Why can't you leave?" he asked. Emily laughed weakly. "Because the motel doesn't let you check out until it's done with you." She pulled him inside. Room 7 was colder than room 6. The air smelled of mold and old perfume. On the wall, deep claw marks surrounded the door. "They come at night," Emily whispered. "They look like people. They sound like us." "Who?" Daniel asked. She pointed to the mirror. Daniel approached it slowly. The reflection didn't move. It stared. Then it spoke. "You took my room." Daniel stumbled backward. Emily grabbed his arm. "They're copies. The motel makes them. If they replace you, you stay forever." A sudden pounding shook the door. The old man's voice echoed through the room. "Emily," he said calmly, "you're disturbing another guest." Her face twisted in terror. "He's not human," she whispered. "He's the keeper." The pounding grew louder. The lights went out. In the darkness, something else moved, something breathing low and slow. Emily screamed. The lights flickered back on. Emily was gone. In her place stood Daniel. Another Daniel. It smiled and stepped forward. "You should have stayed in your room," it said. The real Daniel ran back into the hallway. But now every door had the same number. 6. Every single one. And behind each door, something began to knock. Daniel ran. The hallway stretched impossibly long, the carpet squelching under his feet like something wet and alive. Doors marked 6 blurred past him, each handle rattling as if something inside wanted out. Behind him, footsteps echoed, perfectly matching his own. He didn't look back. At the end of the hallway stood the motel office. The neon light outside flickered violently, bathing the room in red. Daniel burst through the door. The old man wasn't behind the counter anymore. Instead, the office walls were covered in photographs. Black and white, hundreds of them. Every photo showed the same motel. Different decades, different people, same expressions. Fear, confusion, recognition. Daniel stepped closer. One photo stopped him cold. A young man standing in front of room 6. Same face, same eyes, same scar on the left eyebrow. The photo was dated 1989. "That's not possible," Daniel whispered. A voice spoke from behind him. "You were my first." Daniel turned. The old man stood inches away. Up close, his skin looked thin, stretched too tightly over bone. His eyes were empty wells. "I built Raven's Rest when I realized something," the old man said calmly. "People leave pieces of themselves behind. Regret, guilt, fear." He gestured to the photos. "The motel collects them." "What do you want from me?" Daniel demanded. The old man smiled. "You came back." "I've never been here." The old man's smile faded. He reached under the counter and pulled out the registry. Flipped to a page. Daniel Carter, room 6. The date read July 14th, 1989. Daniel's knees buckled. "That night," the old man continued, "you ran. You survived, but part of you stayed." He leaned closer. "Now the motel wants the rest." The lights flickered. A sound rose from the hallway. Dozens of voices whispering his name. "Copies. Waiting. There's a way out," the old man said softly. "But only one Daniel can leave." The office door creaked open. 2 sets of footsteps approached. One behind him, one in front. The lights went out completely. In the darkness, someone placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder and whispered, "Choose carefully." Daniel stood frozen. 2 shadows moved in the darkness. One breathed fast. The other didn't breathe at all. The light snapped back on. In front of him stood Daniel. Same clothes, same fear in his eyes. Behind him, the old man watched silently, hands folded like a judge. "I'm real," the other Daniel said quickly. "He's the copy." "No," Daniel replied. "You're lying." They both spoke at once, both voices identical. The old man finally spoke. "The motel doesn't care who's right," he said. "It only cares who belongs." The walls began to pulse like veins beneath skin. Names scratched themselves into the plaster, bleeding dust. Daniel felt a sharp pain in his chest. Memories flooded back. A road. Rain. 1989. He was younger. Driving too fast. A scream. Headlights. Emily. She stood in the road. The crash echoed in his skull. Daniel collapsed. "I killed her," he whispered. The other Daniel smiled. "That's why you stayed," he said. "That's why I exist." The motel shook violently. Doors slammed. Mirrors cracked. The old man's voice echoed through the chaos. "Confession feeds the walls." The other Daniel stepped closer, his eyes empty now. "You ran from the truth," it said. "I kept it alive." The walls began closing in. The old man pointed to a broken mirror. "Only one reflection can remain." Daniel grabbed the mirror shard, hands shaking. "If I destroy you," he said, "I'm free." The copy nodded. "But you'll remember everything." The hallway screamed. Daniel lunged. Glass pierced flesh. The copy screamed, not in pain, but in relief. As it dissolved into dust, Daniel felt every memory lock into place. The crash, the body, the motel. The walls went still. The old man smiled. "Well done," he said. "Checkout is available." The front door opened. Morning light spilled inside. Daniel stepped toward freedom. Behind him, the old man whispered, "Room 6 is ready for a new guest." The door slammed shut. Daniel stood outside. Free, but in the motel registry. A new name carved itself slowly. Emily Carter. Daniel thought he was safe. The morning sun burned through his eyelids as he stepped onto the empty highway. The motel was behind him, just a faint neon buzz on the horizon. He exhaled. Freedom. Relief. Finally. But the feeling didn't last. A chill crawled up his spine. From the corner of his eye, he saw her. A pale figure standing at the edge of the trees. Wet hair clinging to her face. "Emily." Daniel froze. "Emily," he whispered. No response. She lifted her head slowly. Her eyes, empty, hollow, yet burning with recognition, locked onto his. Suddenly, he remembered the old man's words. "Room 6 is ready for a new guest." She didn't run. She didn't move closer. She just stood there waiting. Daniel's heart pounded. Something in him screamed that the motel wasn't finished. He turned and ran. The forest swallowed him. Hours later, drenched and trembling, he found himself back at the highway. But the neon sign blinked again in the distance. Raven's Rest Motel, vacancy. It was closer. Too close. Emily's voice whispered behind him. Soft, fragile, and terrible all at once. "Daniel, you can't leave what you brought with you." He turned. Empty road. A shadow flickered in the motel windows. Daniel realized the motel wasn't a building. It wasn't a place. It was a living trap. And Emily was now part of it. Something inside him shifted. A cold realization. He had escaped the motel, but the motel had not escaped him. He could run, but the walls, the mirrors, the whispers, they would follow. The forest was quiet again. Too quiet. He whispered into the wind, "I'm done." But a voice answered from behind the trees, chilling and intimate. "You're not." Daniel clenched his fists. He didn't know if he was fighting the motel or himself. Daniel's legs burned, his lungs screamed, but the road twisted unnaturally before him. The forest seemed endless. Trees bent unnaturally, their branches like claws. He stopped. The fog thickened, and there was again the neon glow. Raven's Rest Motel, vacancy. He was back. Only it wasn't the motel he remembered. The building stretched infinitely, hallways branching like a maze. Doors multiplied endlessly. Mirrors hung at every corner, reflecting hallways that didn't exist. Daniel stepped inside, heart hammering. "Hello." His voice echoed unnaturally. A faint giggle came from the shadows. Emily appeared, floating down one hallway, her wet hair glowing faintly under flickering lights. Behind her, Dozens of figures emerged from walls. Faces pale, eyes hollow. Belma non guest. Daniel realized the truth. They weren't alive. Why are you still here? He asked. Emily tilted her head. You left part of yourself. The motel keeps what's unfinished. Room 6, it's not just a room. It's a trap, a mirror, a labyrinth of souls. Daniel took a cautious step. Every floorboard creaked. Every shadow moved independently. He tried a door. It opened into another hallway. Another door. The same. He turned in a circle. Mirrors multiplied his reflection. One was smiling. One was screaming. One was standing still watching. From the darkness, a whisper. Daniel, come closer. He tried to run. The hallway twisted. Doors slammed. Mirrors shattered. Yet the fragments didn't fall. They floated, forming new walls. He realized he was trapped inside the motel itself. Not a building, but a living entity, reshaping itself to contain him. Emily stepped closer, her hollow eyes locking onto his. This is the labyrinth. If you want out, you have to walk it. And face yourself. Daniel shivered. The floor beneath him seemed to pulse. The walls whispered his sins, his fears, his memories. Every step he took, the corridors changed. He understood. Escape wasn't about running. It was about surviving the motel's trial and confronting the shadow within room 6. A mirror in the distance reflected his own face, but wrong. Eyes black, smile cruel. The shadow of Daniel waited. Daniel swallowed, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. Daniel's heart pounded as he approached the mirror at the end of the labyrinthine hallway. His reflection stared back, wrong. Black eyes, a twisted grin. It moved independently, stepping closer even though Daniel did not. You can't leave, the shadow whispered. Its voice his own, but sharper, crueler. Daniel stumbled back, tripping over the warped floorboards. Every step echoed unnaturally. From the shadows, faint laughter rose. Emily and the permanent guests, their faces pressed against the walls, whispering secrets only Daniel could hear. I don't belong here, Daniel said, voice shaking. The shadow laughed. You belong wherever fear lingers. Room 6 keeps what is unfinished. Your guilt, your memories, your failures. I am you, the part you tried to leave behind. Daniel realized the motel wasn't just a trap. It was a reflection of the sins it collected. Each permanent guest was a piece of someone who had failed to survive the trial. Emily appeared behind the shadow, her eyes hollow yet pleading. You have to face it, she said softly, or it consumes you. Daniel clenched his fists. He forced himself to look into the shadow's eyes, confronting every memory, every failure. The crash. Emily on the road. His own cowardice. The hallway pulsed violently. Walls stretched, mirrors shattered, and voices of past guests screamed from everywhere. Names scratched in a plaster glowed red. Mark, Emily, Joshua, Daniel Carter. Daniel took a deep breath. I accept it. I can't run from what I've done. The shadow recoiled. The mirrors warped, bending the hallways back into their original form. Emily's face softened, no longer hollow. The permanent guests faded into shadows, whispering, "Thank you," as they disappeared into the walls. But the motel wasn't done. From the floorboards, a dark substance oozed, black, viscous like liquid night. The old man appeared, pale eyes unblinking. Most survived the shadow, he said. Few survived the final trial. Room 6 is ready to show you the last truth. Daniel's stomach dropped. He realized the labyrinth had only led him deeper into the motel's soul. And Room 6 was waiting. Daniel stood before the familiar door. Room 6. The wood was cracked, the handle cold. It pulsed like a heartbeat. The air smelled of iron and old dust. He knew this room held the motel's deepest secret. He entered. The room was empty at first. Then the walls began to bleed words. Names, dates, memories, hundreds of lives. Every guest who had entered Room 6 was etched into the plaster. Their screams echoed softly, as if trapped beneath the paint. Emily appeared, her form faint and flickering. "This is it," she whispered. "Everything the motel has taken is here." Daniel's shadow self emerged from the corner, now solid, grinning cruelly. Do you understand now? This room keeps everything. Every fear, every guilt, every soul. You are not leaving unless you give me everything. A flood of memories hit Daniel. He saw himself in the car accident, every choice, every lie, each one etched deeper into the room. He realized, Room 6 doesn't just trap bodies, it traps the soul. The walls started closing in. A mirror on the far side reflected every version of him. Young, old, broken, terrified. His shadow self stepped forward. Choose, it whispered. Take everything you regret and face it, or join the permanent guests. Daniel closed his eyes. He felt Emily's presence beside him, a fleeting warmth. He drew a deep breath, remembering the crash, the motel, the whispers, the shadows. He accepted it all. When he opened his eyes, the shadow self screamed, shattering into thousands of mirror fragments. The walls stopped moving. Names faded from the plaster. The blood smell dissipated. Emily smiled faintly. You did it. The room, it accepts honesty. It releases you. The door to the hallway opened. Sunlight spilled in. The motel groaned, like a living thing sighing. Daniel stepped through. He was free. Behind him, room 6 pulsed softly, waiting for the next guest. But before he could leave completely, Emily whispered, Some part of you will always remain here. The motel never forgets. Daniel shivered. He walked into the sunlight, knowing the motel was alive, patient, and waiting. Daniel emerged from the motel into the pale morning light. The rain had stopped, leaving the asphalt wet and shiny. He inhaled deeply. Free air, free movement, free life. Or so he thought. As he walked down the highway, the road stretched endlessly, straight and empty. No signs of civilization. No cars. Only the echo of distant whispers that made his skin crawl. He reached into his pocket for his phone. Dead. No signal. A shiver ran down his spine. Behind him, the motel shimmered in the distance. The neon sign flickered. Raven's Rest Motel. Vacancy, though it seemed closer than it should have been. Daniel realized the truth. Freedom wasn't complete. He had escaped room 6, faced his shadow, survived the labyrinth, but a piece of him remained. A fragment, a memory, trapped forever inside the motel. He stumbled upon a small town a few miles away. People moved normally, unaware of the horrors behind him. Daniel tried to speak, but his voice felt hollow, echoing unnaturally. He stopped in front of a diner and saw her reflection in the window. Emily, pale and faint, smiling softly. Remember, she whispered, the motel doesn't forget. It never stops waiting. Daniel's chest tightened. He understood. Every guest, every permanent resident, every shadow, it was all part of a living entity. The motel collected guilt, fear, regret, and left a fragment in the hearts of those who escaped. He sat at a booth in the diner, staring out the window. Sunlight reflected on the glass. In the distance, the neon sign blinked faintly through the fog, a promise and a warning. Freedom came with a price. Some part of him, the part that had faced room 6 and survived, would always belong to Raven's Rest. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. The world was real, but the memory of the motel was sharper than any pain. He was alive but not whole. The motel waited, patient, eternal, hungry, and somewhere, deep in the shadows of room 6, Emily and the permanent guests whispered, Another will come, another will stay. The wind carried their voices down the empty highway. Daniel knew one truth. Raven's Rest Motel never really lets anyone leave. It only decides how much of them to take with them and how much to leave behind.